So I always like to start with a prayer, and it goes something like, just give us the space tonight to be open, to be receptive for any insights, opening shifts in consciousness that want to come through. May we be vessels and channels of God's love and luminosity, peace, come from a place of inner freedom and unconditional relationship with the moment. May we shine the authentic essence of who we are and be appreciative and receptive and open to learn from the authentic essence of who each other is in the one divine essence. Amen.
Liam really needs to go.
So, welcome everybody. Great to be here with you all. The intention of our group is to support each other, to transcend suffering, to thrive physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And I think that the intention for me is to also kind of integrate two things. So I was thinking of Eckhart Tolle, who was one of my teachers today, and he's kind of been saying the same thing for like since the 90s. I think I first started tuning into him, and his message hasn't really changed. Like be in the now. With all this stuff is true, but I think the limitation is it doesn't integrate the world. So you kind of have spirituality and the world kind of become like two separate things, which is understandable because it's a lot harder to integrate the world. It's a much higher degree of difficulty, but I think that's the challenge is to be grounded in a space of stillness, be grounded in the spiritual truth of who you are, be grounded in that deeper sense of self-realization, and then be able to um, navigate the world. So it's kind of like being in a non-dual essence and being able to navigate the world of duality. And one of the things that's interesting too about duality is the primary duality is the yin and the yang, right? So you go from the non-dual, from the universal essence to all of a sudden there's two things. And the primary duality is the masculine and the feminine. And I think to me, that's one of the most interesting components right now is the feminine and the masculine and how those two um, can co-create together. In the same way that when the masculine and feminine come together, it makes a baby. That's the creative force that makes anything that's amazing and beautiful and miraculous and magical. And if you don't have the proper balance of the two, which I think is quite rare to have the proper balance of the two. So most of the spaces that I go into, I either find imbalanced on the masculine side or imbalanced on the feminine side. And there's not the balance of the two where they can create, you know, um, magic. So that's something we can kind of explore. Because I think that's to me, that's kind of one of the underlying themes that's percolating right now. And then there's talk about like, well, what's the conscious masculinity and what's the toxic masculinity? And I think there's also toxic femininity, and then what's the conscious femininity, and how do these two things work together? And a lot of times the two are afraid of each other, and there's trauma from the other one. And so I think all of this is kind of working itself out in the collective. We had a really interesting, some of the guys are in the men's mastermind group that I'm in. We had an interesting dialogue last night on that. So I think some of the collective themes that are happening. Another one that's really to me is really essential or really prominent. It's kind of really like up in the face that I don't think is getting much attention for the obvious reason when I say who it is the media, the mainstream media, Hollywood, um, the government itself, the intelligence agencies, um, the people that are um, telling us what to think. right? Or the people who are the celebrities. Um, what I see happening that I think is really interesting, not only do people not really care what these media outlets say anymore or what celebrities say anymore, it's actually a negative. What they actually want to they actually detest these people and they want to go against what they say. Um, so that's a fascinating thing to look at going forward is I think that if you're actually a politician, you're going to do better having the media hate you, despise you, having the celebrities hate you and despise you because people distrust these people so much and dislike them so much and feel that they've been lied to by them so much and don't respect them as far as how do I say like there's like a sense of like let's take Hollywood for example. There's kind of a sense of like there's it's a degenerate uh, world that the people are living in. So they're not really respected in the way that it's like we know too much now. And so it's not really who you want to be like connecting with and be like, oh yeah, like this person likes me and that person likes me. And it's like it used to be a good thing, but I don't think it's a good thing anymore. And I think the other part of it is because there's such an imbalance now in the wealth. So you're talking about people that are so wealthy that they can't connect to the average person, right? Multi millionaires, right? And um, the average person just doesn't feel a connection to someone who's, flying private jets and going here and doing this, and they don't live the life that the average person lives. And so it's not even necessarily their fault. They literally just don't know what the average person is experiencing. And I think the average person is experiencing hardship. They're having trouble paying their bills. They're having trouble getting by. They're having trouble making ends meet. So if you're not talking about that, you don't really get, what's happening for most people. And then on top of that, it's kind of like goes both ways. So just like how most people dislike the celebrities and dislike the media and dislike that whole thing the pop music industry. I think actually those people dislike the people. So it's like there's kind of this thing. I've been in many conversations and left-wing progressive circles in my life, and it's really sad and it really kind of turned me off, to be honest, because there is this thing of like, oh, these people are garbage, they're stupid, they're dumb, they're backwards, they don't know what they're talking about. It's like it's just really kind of like looking down on people. And I think that people just had enough, and they know it, they get it, and they don't like it. And so when someone comes up and they want to stick it to those people, they get behind it. And I think that's a lot of what's happening. And I think there's a lot of other things happening too. There's many things that are happening, right? But those are a couple like prominent things that I see. And then I think if you're just tuning into those media outlets, you don't know like all of the really positive things that are moving forward um, as far as things that I've been interested in and we've talked about at different points as far as holistic health and holistic wellness, stuff that RFK is bringing, um, Callie and Casey Means are bringing, um, other people too. There's something that's happening in the Republican Party where it's changing and transforming in this incredible way that if you're paying attention, you're like, oh my God, like this is amazing. Like what is happening? There's this whole transformation that's happening. And to me, it's actually, when I look at things, to me, it's actually the progressive party right now. It's actually the party where like there's actual change and interesting, innovative ideas and stuff happening. But it all just started like the last few months. So I get that people can't really grasp it or wrap their minds around it yet or kind of understand it yet. But it's like happening right now. And then with the Democratic Party, they just seem to be um a mess. Like they don't seem to, I think they have there's a lot of like questioning that needs to happen about like they just seem to be very out of touch with the average person. Um I honestly except for like a couple issues, I honestly don't even know what the platform was or what they were trying to move forward. Um, so I think anyway, there's kind of this idea that like if you it's like it's like I was telling the guys last night, it's like different rapper, same shit. It's like there's idea that like if you like change the person and you know there's a different look, but that it's actually different. But people are smart enough to know it's not different. You're giving us the same thing you've been giving us, and it's not working. So to me, like the results of what's happened with the election are not surprising. Um, and I also know that a lot of people that I know are like really upset and really despondent and um, really depressed and really are envisioning a terrible world going forward and all sorts of dark scenarios. And my heart goes out to everybody. And my intention is, I guess, would be because I think, you know, someone in the men's mastermind last night was saying they're really confused by what happened, right? So my intention, I think confusion does is one of the key causes of suffering, right? When we're confused. So my intention is just to try to explain what's happening because I feel like I get what's happening, you know. And then, you know, of course, you can agree or disagree. You can like a candidate or not like a candidate, but I think it is helpful to understand what's happening. You know, that brings a certain kind of like groundedness. Um, so yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting, as it always is. The one thing about life is it's always interesting, no matter what's happening. It's going to be very interesting what comes forward. I think there could be some really um, there can be some real change happens now that hasn't happened in well, really ever. Um, and the thing is that we are co-creative participants, you know? So we are co-creating every moment together. So I think one of the things is there gets to be like a disempowerment. Like if the candidate that you like or don't like is is the president or the governor or the mayor or whatever, um, we kind of like feel like we can't live the life we want to live. And I'm not to say that in some ways we are certainly we are affected by everything and everyone, but we do have the power to create the life that we're called to create, you know, and we do have that ability to create the kind of communities that we want to create. And um, the most essential thing is just to come from a place of love, freedom, empowerment, inspiration, um, and bring that in to each moment from the authentic essence of who we are. And so it's like, you know, I'm talking about the political situation because I know it's like really up for people. But at the same time, I think it's also gives you some peace to know that it's not the most important thing. It's not the second most important thing, third, fourth. You know what I mean? It's like it's down the scale. Not to say there's no importance, but it's not what's most essential. And I think it's important to keep that in mind as well. And I think that really helps to keep us grounded and centered in ourselves and um, yeah, creating the kind of life that we're called to create. So I think I'll pause there. And if anybody has any questions or comments or reflections, feel free to share. I'll just say I don't normally need to share this, but tonight I just want to share just to be, you know, come from a place of as best you can, graciousness and openness and love, peace and understanding and curiousness, and just be open to what people have to share if their opinions and ideas are different than yours. And for me personally, I have friends from all different and family from all different ways of seeing the world and all different ends of the spectrum. And I think that um, it's interesting that people from different perspectives and different ways of looking at things. And I feel like I love people regardless of how they look at things or how they see things. And people's ideas and views of things change over time too. That's important because when people go like, I'm this or I'm that or I'm left or I'm right or I'm conservative. It's fine to say those things, but I'm just making the point that we should always be open to our perspective evolving and growing and changing and shifting and learning from other people, especially in the time we are now, because what I see is the very definition of these things. It's like it's shifting right now. You know, it's changing. What these two parties are changing. What the just to give one example, working class people. When I was growing up, that was like for sure a Democratic thing. I mean, Democratic people. If you're working class, you went with the Democrats. You know, um, and the Republican was like the corporate big shots. And now it's like there's this massive movement of working class people feeling like they're being heard and listened to by the Republican side. So that's just like an example of like this thing that's shifting. Um, you have Dick Cheney and his daughter on the Democratic side now. I think the Bushes are on the Democratic side. You have RFK and Tulsi Gabbard and Elon Musk and Joe Rogan and all these people used to be Democrats, and now they're shifting. JD Vance used to be a Democrat. Now they're all shifting to the other side. So there's this whole massive thing happening, and it's just important just to like pay attention and not get caught in old mindsets of like how it used to be and just like, oh, how's it? Because part of this thing of being in the moment is there's like the timeless essence of who we are, which never changes, right? And then there's this thing that's continually changing. Every moment it's changing, it's changing, it's changing. It's always in continual transformation. So the more you can like be with this change and transformation and like adjust to it and adapt to it and evolve with it, um, and not get stuck in the old, then the more you're freed up inside to to embrace life and be with life and participate in life. And then it's kind of like this sense of like wonder of like, wow, like what's going to happen next? Life becomes much more interesting and exciting when you're just like, what's going to happen next? And you're like open to it. So that's the consciousness that I'm inviting everybody to bring this evening and beyond. And um, yeah, does anybody have any reflections or comments or questions, or they want to share their uh, feelings? Feel free to feel free to share.
Okay, I'm putting my hand up. This is Godfrey. So yeah, I think what Brian might be pointing towards is the eternal moment, the now, points to two things. One is you can be in the now, in present with your body, with my body. I can be present. And then if I look outside or even inside, there is movement in my body, like my body will feel certain emotions, movements, or sensations, or I might feel hungry one minute or not the next. And in the outside world, there's that constant change. But we we like certainty. We like to say, well, I'm this. Well, like I'm a Republican or I'm a socialist. But actually, if we look really carefully, any of those movements, they're constantly changing. So, so that's for me, that's the power of now is to be aware of those changes and also to be aware of the still point at the same time.
Well said. What came to me is I am this right now, and I'm open to being something else. I think that's the consciousness to be in, you know? And that creates the most exciting dialogue and communication. Like those kind of when you're coming from that consciousness and you can be in dialogue when people are in that space, that's the most exciting dialogue to be in. And unfortunately, like, again, going back to the media, we don't really get that because you get these talking heads that they want to just yell at each other and try to um, hit their talking points that they've been given. So you could be in that consciousness of like, yeah, this is where I'm at right now, but I'm open to whatever I'm going to be next. Makes life a lot more exciting.
Hey,
Sorry,
I'm
Natalie.
Robin.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead. Oh, okay. Um, yeah, I've always really hungered for harmony, in a family, say, any kind of disruption is always been upsetting to me. And I feel like that right now with the parties being so polarized because I have family members on both sides, and I really cherish like big family gatherings when everybody's happy and friendly um and it sort of shifted a ways back where it wasn't like that. And what kind of helped me though was when I started seeing this picture that we were being played kind of, with the media because, most anybody who's raised in the United States, or even if you come in later, we know that united we stand and divided we fall. And so, when I would see, I would find myself watching the news um and uh and feel like they were, they'd gotten so about personality and about personal attacks. And I started realizing that, somebody told me this, I have no idea if it's true, but a lot of people agree, is that, for instance, like Fox News and CNN, they're all owned by the same financial elite. And it's almost like they're playing this little game of manipulation where they're making us fight each other like a football game, and accentuating differences. There's always been differences, but it's almost like a big gossip thing. And so I think to myself, if this news station is and I see it on both sides, is promoting division, is the news station funded by people who really are for a strong democracy? Are they funded by people who really want America to be strong? Or are they funded by, and from what I've heard, who knows what, but a lot of people will agree that there's a financial elite. They don't really have an alliance to any certain country. They just make tons of money when they have houses everywhere and they can move things around and start wars here and there and have trade here and there real easily. And they're not particularly interested in like our country. So it helped me to be less angry at another side. And it made me feel like, oh, there's this third element, so I'll leave it there for.
Thanks, Robin. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the globalist is one name for those people, and definitely, I don't think there's much doubt that they're real.
Thank you all for sharing.
Hi, Gigi.
Hi, glad to be here.
Hmm.
In my car, I'm like sitting outside of a potluck. I'm like, I have to go make this call.
That's awesome.
Um, it's really interesting. I see things in terms of um patterns of behavior in
Hmm.
relation to the movement of consciousness and life force energy into a state of liberation. And so I see this as like a collective moment of like a really effective breathwork session. And
Nice.
some people are deep in it, some people are laughing, some people are crying, some people are midwiving those
Mm.
experiences.
Wow.
And then everybody's also fluidly moving in between those different roles. But it feels like with breath work, you're getting beneath those sensations and unlocking that potential that's in there through stored emotion, energy, information locked up in the fascia. I see that happening right now collectively. And so I can see like the provocation of some things that are said and the benefit of that in relation to energy being stirred up so that it can move freely within each of these vessels. And whether or not um, someone is suffering, I guess, depends on how comfortable they are with that process.
That's deep. I love that. That's great.
Yeah,
I hadn't thought of it like that, but that's a great way of looking at it. It's like a global collective breathwork session. Because
so
like
much.
one of the things we always talk about in breathwork at the beginning, we always say, well, let me backtrack. Like there's kind of this sense, of like, oh, don't cry or don't why are you so upset or why, why you're overreacting. This kind of thing comes up, for certainly in me and I think in all of us at times, right? Um, but in the breathwork session, we always say like, embrace your emotions, whatever arises, whatever is arising is what's supposed to arise. Um, and whatever is arising for your healing. Like it's things that have been pent up, things that have been repressed, things that have been suppressed, things that have been trapped inside you. When you move through the breathwork session, they're coming to the surface to be released and to be healed, right? So I love that because yeah, it's like that's on a collective level, things are coming to the surface for some, like Gigi was saying, some people joy, ecstasy, bliss, other people sadness, despair, and whatever's coming up, there's like this innate trust that what's coming up is coming up to be it's coming up for a reason. It's coming up because it's the authentic essence of who you are. And in some cases, it's coming up to be healed or it's coming up to be transmutated into what's next for all of us. And everybody has their role to play too. Like there's this kind of this idea that like like the hero, we think of the hero has its role to play to bring us up into whatever the next level of our awakening is, right? But I actually think the villain has a role to play too. Like the hero can't be the hero without it's like we're in this grand theater. And even thinking of the two-party system, like I know like most of us are very negative about the two-party system, but I was actually thinking of it as like a polarity where the one actually can make the other one better because when one wins, the other loses, the other one's like, okay, well then how do I get better? And then so it like pushes you forward. It can, if it's working properly, it can push you forward to higher evolutionary order and to get better. Um, and the same with like this dynamic of like the hero and the villain. It's like the hero can't get better without the villain to struggle against to take it to the next level. So there's this kind of like grand theater of things from that meta view that when you kind of look back, um, is like one of the things Annie and I were talking about today was I think we can all agree that the COVID era was a horrible time. I don't think there's much dispute about that. Um, so like forced masking and forced lockdowns and forced injections and forced people to be 6 foot distant and all this stuff. And like I'm actually feeling I'm kind of seeing something. It hasn't quite it's not there yet, but I'm seeing something where I see today for the first time and I was like, oh, I'm starting I think I'm starting to see because it's like in your own personal life, everything that happens for a reason, happens for you to awaken and to evolve in your conscious, take it to the next level, right? So I'm starting to see that like how what happened there, I think we all learned a lot, and we realized a lot, and the seeds of that are planted something that are just starting now to like come into starting to pop through the surface. And I think you're going to see some good things in the awareness coming into the world from that period now. And I think there was a lot of learning. I know for me personally, for sure, like I learned, especially in the political realm, I learned a lot that opened my eyes to a lot, became aware of a lot. And I think a lot of people have. And yeah, just good to keep that in mind. It's definitely hard when you're in it, but it's good to keep that in mind that like everything that's happening is happening for us to grow and to evolve and to awaken our consciousness, and ultimately is going to be for our benefit and good for us to give us the lessons that we need to learn.
Yeah, and even if sometimes it's hard to for our psyche to accept that everything is for that, which my sense is that everything is created by and from our own consciousness to
Hmm.
bring us into our sensations, to get
Yep.
beneath those points, to liberate all that stuff. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard for the psyche to understand. And even if we don't want to say that and we just say everything has the opportunity to assist us in our growth and expansion and deepening
Hmm.
embodiment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything exactly. It has the opportunities there if we take it. Otherwise, we repeat the lesson.
Hmm. Oh, sorry. Uh, yeah. Also, I think with Hurricane Helene, we saw all these people just helping each other for weeks, and I saw, what could be like if we organized
Mm.
society the way we wanted to, with love in our hearts, we could, wow, we could do so much. Like so much was done, in Marshall, I saw it. I'm sure in all the other areas, Barnardsville and Swannanoa and like countless other places. And no one was waiting for the government agencies to come in. Really, they just got on with it. And what was the other thing? Oh yeah, and also because of the pandemic, just to link in with what Brian was saying, um, a lot of people thought that the storm was well, either what was it called? Greenhouse effect, right? Or a lot of people said, well, it's geoengineering. And I hadn't heard that amount of people talk about geoengineering like outside my tiny little clique. I was really impressed. I mean, yeah, of course, it's the alternative conspiratorial stuff has been on. I hate to use that word, but on YouTube for a few years now, especially since the pandemic. Anyway.
I think that Hurricane Lena is another example of, well, I wasn't there, but what I heard from a lot of people is how people banded together and came together, and people out of that hardship. It's another example of out of that hardship, people saw another level of possibility of people taking care of each other and supporting each other. So I have heard a lot of stories from people about that as well. Yeah, Andy says we needed that to happen so we could see the underbelly, which led us to changes we are currently seeing with the Maha movement, make America healthy again. Yeah, that's kind of what we were talking about earlier today.
Yeah, with the pandemic, that's what awakened me. I mean, I'll be real open. I grew up in a real strong Republican family. My dad was a ace fighter pilot. My mom was a really strong Christian. And as time went on, I established my own identity, and I became kind of, well, I saw that the people were in mob mentalities, and I didn't like that. So I was like independent for a long time. And then I found myself really identifying more as a bleeding heart liberal because I'm a bleeding heart person. I really, I can be like that. But it was almost like this sense of balance, between male and female, and it was like too far to the right, and then all of a sudden it's like going so far that way, and then all of a sudden, whoa, because I just kept saying, well, who's making all these mandates? I mean, who's like shutting everything down? Is it our president or, and then I realized, oh my God, it's happening all over the world. And like, who is this that has that much power? And it kind of, it's like scared me. Like, there's somebody who can do that, has that much of authority. And I really feel grateful because when that happened, our friend Phoenix started a group called Questioning the Narrative. And I was lucky enough to be invited, and there's like 250 people. And I went there because I wanted to be a peacemaker and, get into the talking aspect so that there wouldn't be harm, nobody would be hurting each other, and I saw, but I was surprised as I got in there, when I was willing to listen and willing to be wrong even about things, I started learning so many different things. And now I'm just so grateful to be willing to be wrong because, oh my God, there's so much more out there to learn, and there's so much further to go. And I don't want to ever think that I know it all, but I sure love freedom. And I think we've taken freedom for granted here. I mean, at least I know I have. And I realize, gosh, how important freedom is to me. And I was raised in kind of a spiritual minded family. I was actually Christian Sciences. And I didn't get any vaccines when I was younger. I had an exemption. And so I guess I was especially uh, annoyed at them saying, oh no, you have to get this. And even though I got COVID and I had a doctor's proof that I got over it, I couldn't go into a bar because I hadn't gotten a shot. It just, that really scared me. And I think it changed my way of seeing things. But I am grateful that it happened because it sort of wakened me up to things.
Thanks for sharing, Jackie. Appreciate it. I mean, thanks for sharing, Robin. Appreciate it. And Jackie, I think you want to say something, right? You're muted.
Unmute. There
There
we
you
go.
go.
Can you hear me? There I am.
Yes. Hi, Jackie.
Hey,
Hey.
so lots of depth here. Good, great conversation. You mentioned though early on about the whole Eckhart Tolle and the power of
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And you said that that really doesn't maybe not be relative or as useful for like real life dealing with things. But it actually is in my perspective because like today I see people on the vote didn't go their way, so they're like
Hmm.
crying and
Yeah.
trauma, like you mentioned, trying and traumatized. And I'm like,
Yeah.
if you really embody the power of now, it's like today is a new day. Like,
Yeah.
what are you going to do today to move forward? What's your next best step instead of feeling like, and that goes back to that whole philosophy of the stages of life happens to me versus life happens by me and then life happens for me. And just, when you really fully embody that, you you have to, I guess my whole point is you have to give up that victim mentality. Like you're
Yep.
living in the past.
100%. 100%.
You're living in the past if you're
Yeah.
living is as like, oh, things have happened to me because I'm the victim. Like you can never get control of your future,
Yep.
regardless, right or left wing politics, either way, uh, if you're holding on to that. So I just think the concept of being in the now of just, okay. And I've been listening to this. So one other thing is I've been listening to this guy, very right wing MAGA. He'll tell you who he voted for. But he said, on Wednesday morning, God will not be surprised. God is still in
Right.
control.
Right. Right.
And it's not that God favored whoever won the outcome. It's that God is still in control of whoever is of the world, not necessarily an individual, but of the world,
Hmm.
regardless. So
Yeah.
this or that person may have all the things they intend to do, but we don't know what opportunities and challenges they're going to have, and and how their actual actions are going to come out to play. At the end of the day, that one individual is not in control. The
Nope.
universe is in control. Anyway,
Mhm.
just my 2 cents.
Thanks, Jackie. Yeah, I totally agree about the being in the now is the key to the whole thing, for sure. I was just saying that Eckhart doesn't generally talk about like current events, and most spiritual teachers don't. And I get why they don't talk about it, because then people lose the they lose the stillness. It's easy to lose the stillness, and you get it's like we were talking about the ocean and the surface of the ocean, and then the stillness at the bottom of the ocean, right? So if you're focusing on the surface and the waves at the top of the ocean, you can lose the awareness of the stillness pretty easy. So then most teachers will just be like, well, just focus on the stillness. Don't focus on the surface. And so what I'm saying is like, can we take it to the next level and focus on the stillness and the surface? So be able to like be in the world, but not of it, which I think, Jesus is such a great model of that, of like, um, in that grounded in God, grounded in the stillness, but yet, dealing in the world, having the different the different intense situations and moments that he has or had, having the different range of emotions and feelings and thoughts and relationships and interactions. So that's what I'm saying is like I think most spiritual teachers don't want to go there because they think, well, it's going to be too hard, which it is really hard. But so I'm kind of like, okay, well, let's even though it's hard, let's do it anyway. Let's see if we can like talk about things that are happening in the world and on the surface and different things that are going on and be grounded in the stillness at the same time.
Brian, that reminds me of kind of that wisdom lesson. It's like
Well, we can't hear you too well, Will. Are you on
with my
some kind of
students, man.
different are you on some kind of different microphone or something?
Just on my phone, but
There we go.
wherever the
That's it.
trigger
That's it.
is,
That's it. Right there.
okay. I was just
Okay.
thinking, wherever like wherever my peace is disturbed is the place that I can learn something.
Right.
So if we really want to have that ultimate attitude of learning, I mean, politics is becomes the most right place to learn. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm so grateful for it. It has taught me so much about the world I live in that is, occupied by many different people with many different experiences. But to
Yeah.
to try to embrace and feel that is it's an incredible opportunity. I mean, just the whole country, the whole world has an opportunity through the internet, through the technology right now that's changing to reach our embrace and learn more than about each other and about ourselves than we ever had. So I really am feeling that charge and challenge and potential um, for humanity right now. I also wanted to mention that the age-old wisdom that left implies right. So, anytime somebody's choosing a side, I'm like, well, the reality is life is a miracle that works on balance. If you have too much of this or that or whatever, it doesn't work. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
about some central,
Yeah.
Buddha said the center way, which, sometimes you have to swing right or swing left to get more
Yeah.
center. Um, I see it for us. We're headed to a centered self and a centered humanity. It's be
Yeah.
great.
I love both those points. The balancing of the left and the right. Yeah, it's like and the way Robin framed it too, that the balancing the masculine and the feminine. I think it's a
Right.
similar thing. And just naturally the way life moves, I think the imbalance is natural. Like there's going to be this moment where it's like, oh, there's like not enough feminine energy here. We gotta there's like, oh, not enough masculine energy here. We gotta so I think it's like God is like the imbalance and then creating the high. It's almost like you're here and then you go here. So you're going, it's like I call it higher order integration. It's like when you go up, but as you go up, there's all kinds of movement. So things are getting shaken and out of balance, but then they rebalance themselves at the higher order. So I
Hmm.
think that's what's happening. And then in regards to your first point, like I totally agree. Will and I can talk for hours about spirituality. We can also talk for hours about politics. And I think I learn like I've been actually the last few months, I just got really fascinated with politics. So I just started like going in and like just super fascinated, super interesting. But I'm learning it's not because a lot of, spiritual people will be like, well, politics is, I don't get into that. But I think you actually can learn about things spiritually because when you go into the politics, you're going into the human psychology, you're going into the human
Totally,
condition, you're going into the way
totally.
people think about things, you're going into what triggers people. And
Right.
these these what do you call them? Like whatever the people are that are behind the politicians, their team or whatever. Um, they they're basically masters of psychology. Like and it's not always for good, for sure. A lot of times it's for negative because they know what will manipulate you. They know what emotionally can manipulate you to get you to think the way they want you to think or do what they want you
Hmm.
to do. So it's like you just
Hmm.
start watching the way the thing works and you just learn so much about the human psychology. And like, oh, if you tell people that and say it with this kind of emotion, then they're all going to do this, And it's like it's
Right.
almost like the way I've kind of thought about the human condition is it's like all these different levels of like hypnotism, like mass hypnotism. And
Uh-huh.
it's like the more you wake up from being hypnotized, the more you wake up from someone else patterning the way you think and the way you look at things and the way. And so you can still do whatever, if someone says, hey, I'd like you to do this, you can still do it or not do it, but you're not hypnotized to do it unconsciously. So
Yeah, I mean,
through like
fear.
looking, yeah, through
uh,
looking at the process, like I'm seeing all the ways like humanity gets hooked and gets triggered and it's amazing, it's really an amazing thing to notice and to learn and to the way you go into it, the more you kind of liberate yourself from it, and then you can kind of engage in it from a more centered, grounded space of who you really are.
The trickiest thing though is to know what the truth is. And
Yeah.
my daughters are, she's in her mid 40s, my older daughter, and she has two kids, and she's like, Mom, I just don't have time to
Yeah.
research all this. I
Yeah.
mean, she can't just take for granted what's on the major media, that's for sure. And and finding the truth, and I like how, Jesus said, if you know the truth will
This will
set you
set you
free.
free
And
100%.
I see that as truth spiritually and truth. Like, you have to know the truth of what's happening in order to make a
And
decision.
then you feel free inside.
Hmm.
Yeah. But this brings up the great question. One of probably the most timeless questions is, yeah, how do you know what is true? It's a really hard question to answer, and I'll answer it as best I can in words. I think the first thing is to get Jeff and I were talking about in the Bible. It says, "Be still and know that I am." Right? God says that in the Bible. Be still and know that I am. So the first thing I think is to get to a space of stillness, inner silence, clarity inside. It's almost like you're making a space because if you're so cluttered with like anxiety and stress, which most of in our society, most people are like continuously. So you can't, then you just lose total connection from the truth because you can't access the truth from that place. And then you're easy to manipulate as well. Especially I said the number one thing is if you're afraid. If you're afraid, you're easy to manipulate. And they're trying to make you afraid because they want to manipulate you. So this is why also on the conspiracy theory side, I don't like a lot of that stuff either because they try to make you afraid. And then it's the same way it works that way as well. So so to get into a space of like really being like grounded and centered and having a sense of inner peace and spaciousness. And then if you get in that space, and this could be like a spiritual question or a question about your personal life, meaning like which way should I go in my life? Um, or it could be something about it could be anything. Um, so you kind of ask the question, and then the best way I can describe it is it's like if you play the guitar there and you start tuning the guitar. So let's say you want to play the G string. So you're tuning the guitar and you're like, there's a certain point where it just sounds right. Like the tone is full, you know? And I feel like that's the best way I can explain like how you know what the truth is. It's like it like resonates through your whole body from this place of like relaxed stillness. So and it's just like ooh, just has this perfect like tone to it. And if it doesn't, it just sounds like distorted, or it sounds like it doesn't, that feeling where it's like, it just doesn't sound right. I don't know what there's a thing where you can be like, I don't know what the truth is yet, but I know that doesn't feel right. It doesn't sound right. Right. It's that kind of a feeling. And I think we learn to trust that, to trust that. And I think we're being told basically not to trust that, you know, like trust the science, but like I mean, science is the observation of truth, right? So um, it's not someone telling you something that doesn't feel true inside yourself. Um, so I think that's such a key question. Is like, well, what is truth? Because someone will be like, well, the truth is this and that, and all these different words and thoughts and start. It's like, but it's like the core question of like, how do you know what someone's saying is true? Because you go through the day, people are telling you you're hearing all kinds of things, all different things, all stuff on the internet. There's all stuff on all these different media sources, social media. It's like, how do you know what's true? So I think that question, and then I do think it's really valuable to be like, well, this is what because basically to reflect with each other, to bounce off each other, to like, that's really helpful, to have that sense of community with people that are
Mhm.
dedicated to the truth together. Um, Jackie, go ahead. Still on mute.
There we go.
Yep.
Well, in nursing, we're taught about evidence-based practice.
Hmm.
So we really, I mean, it's been a revolution, I would say, over the last 30 years of not doing things the way you've always done them, but looking for true scientific evidence that what
Hmm.
you're doing is the right thing,
Hmm.
proven.
Hmm.
And if you kind of apply that, I guess I've absorbed that as kind of a life philosophy that if when I hear people debating things, I'm like, there's just so much information out there. If I don't have personal knowledge, I
Right.
haven't read the literature or whatever, then and I don't intend to go do read the literature, then I really I don't have a place having an opinion. Like I just need to let that go, you know,
Yeah. But but
because
but I have a
it,
question for you. You ever been in a situation? I mean, I won't assume. But have you ever been in a
you can.
situation where you're like someone's like, let's say like I'll give you an example for me. Like someone comes up to me, like I'm at a parking lot, they go like, "Hey man, like I just need $5. I want to get my car broke down. I need to blah blah blah." And I'm like, this person's lying to me. Like, yeah, I just like they want to get they like you know what I mean? Like you can just feel when someone or I could feel or I could be opposite, like this person's telling me the truth. But I think it's like the same way like I can feel it in myself. I can if someone
Right.
else isn't like coming from a place that's grounded and centered and clear, and if there's some kind of distortion there, it's like, no, this doesn't feel right. So I think that's the best way we have like an inner compass to like follow that truth, you know,
Right. Well,
trust in
there
it.
is also in my past life though in the accounting world there's a wonderful book. It's called Driving the Tiger. It's from this guy from Sweden, and he said, and this the idea that most decisions you really need to go with 80% information. Like if you try to get to 100% information before you ever make a decision, you're going to be in analysis paralysis. Like you're never going to get there. So there is that you have so much x amount of time to collect the information, the best information that you can. And you just have to go with that. You
Yeah,
can
but
never. Mhm.
I was just saying what I'm saying is based on no information. It's just like in the
A
moment.
gut feel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like there is a thing there where you can just like feel like someone's lying to you, or you can feel like I feel like they're telling me the truth. You can. There's that feeling and I think but we kind of learn to ignore it instead of trust it.
Right. Well, that kind of goes into the whole idea of like an energy field. So
Mm.
even though you don't hear it,
Mm.
it's still there.
Yeah.
Like it's surrounding that person and surrounding
Yeah.
you.
And
So
that
there's
exactly.
that.
So the field is deeper than the words. So it's
Right.
like there's words being said, but like, oh, the field doesn't align with the words. I'm feeling the field, and what you're saying is not what the words, or what the field is saying is not what the words are saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's all part of our like guidance
Mm-hmm.
system.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Yep.
Great. Come.
Yeah. Was somebody else wanting to say something? I think I heard somebody.
I had an interesting thing happen today. I'll make it short because I know I've talked a lot. A friend sent me a link, a friend from Germany, to this scientist who talks a lot about the vaccine, and he was making a kind of a dire claim that going forward, that there's going to be health repercussions from people who are vaccinated. And and I found myself going, egotistically going, yeah, all those people that did that, and I tried to warn my family, and they just thought I was stupid, and they just made fun of me on Facebook, and they went ahead and got them over and over again, and now they're probably going to get really sick. And then I heard my little inner voice say, "Is that what you want to have happen, Robin?" And I'm like, "Oh God, no, of course not."
Mm-hmm.
I don't want, to prove that I was right or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to always ask myself, what is it I really want?
Well, that's a great point. So truth, that's a really important point. Truth has to be beyond your personal, what would you call it? Your personal, what's the word? Um, Ambitions or desires, or whether even if they're positive. Like you may have a positive idea of something. You may want to help people. In fact, I think this is a bigger problem. People want to help people, but it's not aligned with the truth. So then it just creates like problems, you know? So there's people that want to hurt people, it's not aligned with the truth. There's people that want to help people, but it's not aligned with the truth. So I think it's like that, not my will, thy will, right? Like the ego gets its will, and the ego's got this idea of like, I want it to be my way, so I want to ignore the truth, you know? But the truth is going to win, and your ego is going to lose. So the more that we awaken, the more we just learn to just be with the truth, because as Jesus said, the truth will set you free, and align the whole thing. The whole key, the whole thing is to align our will with God's will. I mean, that's really what it all comes down to, you know. So, but that requires, like, to go back to the power of now. That requires like really being in the moment, really being attentive, really listening, really being present to see what the truth is in each moment, because the truth is always changing.
Yeah, but let's get back to what she was saying as well. Like, I mean, Jack, was it Robin? Yeah, because it's helpful to put myself in another person's shoes. You know, when I told my father that he would probably die in 6 months from the vaccine, and he actually did, I didn't feel so great about that. And the reason, I was so into my egoic self, so wanting to be right, so wanting to prove to him that I was right. I mean, in the end, before he passed, I said, I love you. And I tried to make sure that he heard the words of love before he passed. But like, whoa, I thought, whoa, what a lesson. Like I didn't put myself in his shoes. He believes the vaccine is good for him. His whole family, his whole extended family, the Canadians up there, um, believe that the vaccine is the right thing to do. It's a healthy thing to do. And who am I to say, oh, you're wrong? Well, you know, okay, it might be the truth, but is it kind? Like it's a, I don't know, it's a real difficult one for me.
I think that's a great point. That's like
We,
extending, doing
we can't
another
we
setting.
can't hear you again.
Sorry,
Do the thing you did last time that made it work.
like, come on, microphone. I I just am thinking about the point that like the greatest spiritual teaching is give others what you want, and what I want is love. And so, if I find and the ego needs that conflict to live. So it's always, using these situations to find some reason to be right or some sort of divisive action rather than
I think what you're saying is brilliant, but I can only hear like every other word.
Oh,
But
sorry, that's
yeah,
echo for me.
maybe it's like bringing the mic closer. Is that the issue?
No, I don't think so. It may just be cellular connection, but
Okay.
yeah, y'all are making a brilliant point that we need to give others what we want, and there is
Give
no
others
other.
what we want.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's no God. There's no one that doesn't deserve the same love that we want and deserve.
Hmm. Jackie says, "Is it true? Is it kind? Either way, do I really want to say it?" Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's a case by case basis. Um, because I think there is a place to say things that you have a sense. There's a place to say things that are true that you have a sense could hurt someone's feelings. And that's because you love them, not because you're trying to hurt them. And then there's also cases where it's not necessary, you know? So I think it's that's again, it comes back to like really listening in the moment and really what's true in this moment. What's the best medicine
Mm.
to share in this moment? And I think actually the interesting thing is like the more intimacy there is, like the more trust there is between people, the more capacity there's to have harder conversations. So I think sometimes we think of that being a bad thing, but I think it actually is can be a sign of a strong, loving, um, intimate relationship. Anybody else want to share? I think that might be a good resting point. Um, really appreciate, I think beyond the subject or what's being said, I really appreciate like the way that we're being able to communicate here. I think it can be a model for people, and I think people just we kind of touched on this last week, but people just aren't talking to each other enough. They're in these like social media silos, and they're just talking to people that reinforce everything and that they think and that they and it's not a healthy thing because you're not you can't expand your consciousness just by getting stuck in the same feedback loop. So, what I
Mm.
envision us is us like um, having space where there's more a different kind of conversation that happens on a lot of social media. I think social media in general is a bad way to communicate. It's like you type something and then 3 hours later somebody says something back and they're angry and then it's just like this. It's not we're designed to communicate like this, in real time when you can hear people's um, tone of voice and have and in most cases see people's faces and everything. So I feel like happy and proud about what we're doing and grateful, appreciative for all of you guys for being a part of this ongoing dialogue. Let me just give you a couple announcements. So we'll have a 1 day retreat here next Saturday at our place outside Abington, Virginia. So just let me know if you want to be a part of that. I'll give you the link. Quite a few of the people here will be there, so you get to meet some people in person that you've been dialoguing with. Uh, we have a Patreon page to support what's happening here. I'll put the link in the text thread here. Appreciate the support there. Personal sessions with me or group sessions, couple sessions are all available. Feel free to invite your friends to join us here on Thursday nights, and then this will get played back as a on YouTube as a podcast form as well, so you can share that as well. And we have a Telegram group also, so I can give you a link to that as well. So really appreciate you guys. Thanks for being you. and carry this energy forward into the week, and see you next Thursday night.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks.
Good to see everybody.